The night was colder than anyone expected. Not the kind of cold that comes from winter winds or icy air, but the kind that creeps inside your bones, pressing against your chest until you can barely breathe. It was the kind of night when silence felt heavy, and even the shadows seemed alive. People often talk about light and darkness, angels and demons, good and evil. But tonight, it wasn't just a story or a legend whispered to scare children. Tonight, the battle between heaven and hell was about to claim one soul. This is not a tale from ancient myths or a forgotten book of mysteries. It is the story of one ordinary man who became the center of something extraordinary. A man torn between faith and fear, between salvation and destruction. His life was about to be dragged into a dark ritual, one that many call the Devil's Ceremony. Some say these ceremonies are only legends, but in the hidden corners of history, there are countless whispers of possession, of sacrifice, and of spirits locked in a war unseen by human eyes. And in this war, every choice matters, every word holds power, and every shadow could be hiding something unspeakable. The man at the center of this storm never imagined his life would be touched by the supernatural. He wasn't a priest, nor a mystic, not even someone deeply religious. He was just a man searching for meaning, lost between grief and questions he could never answer. But sometimes, the ones who feel the most lost are the very souls darkness tries to claim. And when the devil's eyes fall upon you, there is no hiding, no running. There is only the fight for your soul. The story begins on an evening that seemed perfectly normal. A quiet street, a small home, a flicker of candlelight in the window. But hidden beneath the ordinary, something ancient stirred. The atmosphere was heavy, like the air before a storm. Dogs howled without reason. Clocks ticked unevenly. And somewhere in the silence, a whisper spread like smoke. A whisper promising power, tempting with secrets, and threatening with chains. This was the night the ceremony began. The night when possession would seek to take hold. It wasn't the kind of possession seen in movies with exaggerated theatrics. This was quieter, darker, more real. It crept slowly, stealing the man's strength, twisting his thoughts, and filling him with fear he could not explain. Around him, people sensed something strange, but no one could put it into words. His friends dismissed it as stress. His family called it exhaustion. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. And then came the signs, the flickering lights, the voice in the silence, the dreams that felt too real. Shadows moved when no one was near. Objects shifted without a touch. And in the mirror, sometimes he swore he saw eyes that weren't his own staring back. He tried to pray, but his words felt heavy. He tried to resist, but the grip only grew stronger. This is where our story truly begins. In the fragile space between belief and fear, between hope and despair. One man, one soul caught in a war far bigger than himself. Angels watch, demons whisper, and the ceremony unfolds in the dark. The question remains, will he survive the night, or will the devil's ceremony claim him forever? The days that followed only deepened the mystery and the fear. What started as small, unexplainable events soon grew into something heavier, something that seemed to stalk him in every moment. He would walk through his home and feel as if unseen eyes followed his every step. The house, once filled with warmth and laughter, now felt like a place that carried secrets in its walls. Every corner seemed darker, every sound sharper, and even silence began to feel alive. The conflict was no longer just inside his mind. It was pressing against him from every direction. He tried to explain to those close to him, but his words always seemed to fall short. His sister thought he was exhausted from work. His best friend told him it was only stress and lack of sleep. But when he looked into their faces, he could see that deep down, they sensed something more. No one wanted to say it aloud, but they felt the tension too. It was as if an unseen storm hovered around him, drawing in anyone who dared to come close. And then the dreams became stronger. They were not just fragments of the imagination. These dreams were vivid, filled with symbols and shadows that carried meaning. He saw a dark circle surrounded by flickering light, voices chanting words he couldn't understand, and in the center of it all, his own face. Eyes closed, lips moving as though he was part of something ancient and forbidden. He would wake drenched in sweat, the echo of those chants still ringing in his ears. The more he resisted, the more the pressure grew. Objects shifted when he prayed. His reflection lingered in the mirror after he turned away. The line between reality and illusion blurred, and he realized this was no longer just about fear. This was about control. His soul caught in a struggle between two forces determined to claim him. The night grew heavier as though the very air was pressing against him, thick and suffocating. Every sound felt magnified. The creak of the floorboards, the faint rattle of the window, the beating of his own heart. He lit a candle for comfort, but the flame flickered violently, bending as if something unseen moved through the room. He whispered a prayer under his breath, but halfway through, his voice cracked, the words stumbling out as though something inside him resisted speaking them. The silence that followed was not empty. It was charged, waiting, almost listening. His body trembled as shadows stretched across the walls, forming shapes that twisted into faces he did not recognize. Sometimes they seemed to mock him, other times to beg, and then to vanish into nothing. The dreams had spilled into waking life, and he no longer trusted his own senses. When he tried to leave, the door jammed. When he reached for his phone, the screen refused to light up. It felt as though the world itself was trapping him in place. Far away, church bells rang faintly, almost drowned out by the rising hum in his ears. The sound wasn't coming from outside but from within, as though 1,000 whispers were circling in his mind, pulling him toward surrender. His heart pounded, his breath shallow, as his body grew weaker. The battle wasn't only around him anymore. It was inside him, clawing for control. The room grew colder, the candle extinguished with a sudden hiss, and in that instant, darkness swallowed everything. He knew he wasn't alone. Something was here now, closer than it had ever been, pressing against the thin line that separated his will from complete submission. And in that suffocating darkness, the devil's ceremony was about to reach its peak. The darkness pressed down on him like a weight, and just when he thought he couldn't bear it any longer, a faint light broke through. It wasn't the candle. It wasn't from the street outside. It was softer, warmer, like a glow that pulsed from somewhere within the room itself. For a moment he felt relief, but then he realized the light was coming from the old mirror on the far wall. The glass shimmered, its surface rippling as though it were water. He stepped closer, drawn in against his own will, and what he saw froze him in place. It wasn't his reflection anymore. Instead, he saw himself standing inside the circle from his dreams, lips moving as if reciting a language he did not know. Around him stood figures cloaked in shadow, their faces hidden, their voices low. The reflection self seemed older, colder, almost consumed, as though this was a glimpse of what was to come if he surrendered. His chest tightened with fear, but before he could turn away, the reflection's eyes snapped open and locked on his own. In that instant, the room shook as if the walls themselves rejected his presence. The whispers grew louder, layered voices calling his name, promising answers, threatening ruin. He stumbled back, but the mirror didn't return to normal. The glow spread wider, spilling across the floor in patterns like marks of an unseen ritual. It wasn't just the devil's ceremony anymore. It was something larger, something that seemed to echo through time. Then came the second twist he never expected. The voices were not all the same. Beneath the mocking tones, there was another sound, stronger, sharper, almost protective. It wasn't pleading like the others, but commanding, as if trying to break through the storm. For a moment, he couldn't tell if it was his imagination or something real, but the clash between these forces made the air vibrate. He realized now that this wasn't a one-sided battle. He was not only a victim, He was the battlefield itself. The thought chilled him more than the darkness ever could. If the ceremony succeeded, it wouldn't just mean the loss of his soul. It could mean opening a door that had been sealed for centuries. A war fought in silence, hidden from human eyes, would erupt into his world. And he, unwillingly, had become the center of it all. The ground beneath him trembled again, the whispers rising into a deafening roar, as if the final choice was about to be forced upon him.